A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I hope you're well. Today we are starting with a very interesting story. It is Surah Al Kahf, story of Moses and a man that he meets. The name has been given to us as Khidr from Hadith, but it's not mentioned in the Quran as Khidr. The very first ayah comes with a massive impact. Ayah number 60. وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِفَتَاهُ لا أبرح حتى أبلغ مجمع البحرين أو أمضي حقبا. And lo, behold, Moses said to his attendant, the young man, I will never give up until I reach the junction of the two seas, even if I have to travel for years in my quest. Now, this is a very strange way of telling a story, which is unique to the Quran. When you go to old texts and religious texts, you see the story starts with a beginning and a middle and an end, and there's a chronological order. Once upon a time, so and so happened. But Quran starts its once upon a time from the very middle. And this is a special way of telling a story, and it is known as in medias res. In the Latin language, it means in the midst of things. So the narrative technique is that you drop the audience into the middle of a story. Suddenly a scene appears and it grabs the attention of the audience, and that's what the Quran is doing. And it does it a lot, and this is one of the very special techniques of narrative and storytelling and rhetoric in the Quran, along with many other very sophisticated techniques which are now being recognized by some very big writers, and some huge names in literature are using these techniques, which were very first used in the Quran. So, see, the scene is that Moses is standing with a young man, and it starts with وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى, and lo and behold, when Moses said لِفَتَاهُ, to his young attendant. Now, Fatah is literally a young man, a man who can make his own decision, who's an adolescent, who can give consent for things, who can buy and sell property and make his own decision. That is a fatah. In colloquial terms, it's also used for a helper or a assistant, and also for a servant. So many people have mistranslated it as a servant, but we know from the hadith that this was a student, not a servant, but a student of Moses. And when the story goes on, you'll find out why he was not a servant and a student. And I'll explain it in the next few ayat, inshallah. And his name is not mentioned in the Quran, but the hadith says his name was Yeshu bin Nun. Now remember this, Yeshu bin Nun has been translated as Yeshua, and later on became Joshua. And this is, according to the Bible, the young man who, after Moses passed away, became the prophet and the leader for the Bani Israel. So Yeshua bin Nun is with him, and the scene opens. Moses is standing there and saying to Yeshua bin Nun, La abrahu hatta abluqa majma al-bahrayni aw amdiya hukba. I am not going to give up until I reach the junction of the two bodies of water. Now, majma means the junction. Bahrain is two bodies of water. Bahar is a body of water whose other end cannot be seen. So it could refer to the sea, to the ocean, to a big river like the river Indus. When the Arabs came across it, they called it Bahar Sindh because it was so big you couldn't see the other end of it. Or the Nile, also at some points it's so big that you can't see the other end. Or it could be a massive lake. So there are two big bodies of water whose other end cannot be seen, and they're meeting each other, and that's Majma al-Bahrain, and that is the aim for Moses to go there with his assistant. Now, he is very determined to do that. So he says, even if I spend decades, years go by in this quest. Huqaba is many, many years, decades and decades upon decades. So Moses is determined to go to this junction of bodies of water. And why is he doing that? Hadith tells us that Bani Israel was going through a lot of turmoil. They was disillusioned, they were frustrated, depressed, things were not going according to the plan, and they were quite upset. At that time, Moses was told by God to go meet this one person who has a certain knowledge that Moses doesn't have. And Moses has a certain knowledge that that person doesn't have. And the whole purpose of this trip was to show Moses that things apparently might look bad, but there is always something good coming out of it. This is the promise of Allah. Inna ma'al usri yusran fa inna ma'al usri yusra. With every difficulty there's an ease, and with every difficulty there's another ease. There are two eases with every difficulty. So he is on the quest to see this person. Now, who is this person? The name is not given in the Quran. The Hadith describes him as Khidr. And a lot of myths and legends have come across by his name. And as we go on with the study of Surah Al Kahf, I'll talk to you about these myths and legends, and how much of them are true and how much of them are borrowed from other stories and other religions. But let's first focus on this Majma al-Bahrain. So where is this junction of two bodies of water? From the religious point of view, it doesn't matter. It is a long journey. They're going to a place where they're junction of two bodies of water. They're going to meet a person. We have to focus on the purpose of their trip and the outcome of the journey. But there have been so many stories and legends about it that it is of academic interest to know where it could be. And it will also give us some secondary information about this person and about the time of Moses and Moses himself. So there are 5 or 6 areas which could be the candidate for it. First of all is Gibraltar, where the Mediterranean Sea, a big body of water, a bahar, meets the Atlantic, another bahar. And it was well known in ancient times. There were the pillars of Hercules, and Hercules was supposed to be standing at one end holding up the sky and everything. So that is an important place in North Africa, and it could be that Moses was traveling to there. The second is the East Horn of Africa, near Djibouti area, where the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea meet. So this is the other area, which is a possibility where he might be heading for the two big bodies of water. The third could be where the River Nile meets the Mediterranean, so at the very end of Egypt. And the fourth could be where the River Nile comes together. There are two branches of the River Nile which come from Sudan. There is the White Nile, the Bahr al-Abyad, and there is the Blue Nile, the Bahr al-Azraq. And you see the word Bahr is used, although these are rivers, but the word Bahr is used because they are so big you cannot see the other end very easily. And they combine in a place which nowadays we call Khartoum, which is the capital of current-day Sudan. So this is another place where Moses could have been heading for and expecting to meet that person. Now, what is the importance of these places? Now, if it's any of these places, whether it's Gibraltar or Djibouti or Egypt and meeting Mediterranean or the Khartoum, this means that this prophet he's meeting, and he's a prophet Khidr, we know he's a prophet because of two things. Number one, Allah talks to him directly, gives him direct orders, and Allah only gives direct orders to prophets, not to common human beings. And number two, Allah also gives him direct orders to carry out capital punishment, to take another person's life. And again, we know from the study of theology and history and Islam that direct orders from Allah to a human being to take a life would only come if they are a prophet. Common, ordinary humans are not going to get them. So if these are the 4 candidate places, then Khidr alayhi salam is a prophet to an African nation. He's not from Bani Israel, and when they meet, we find out that he doesn't even know Moses, and Moses has to introduce himself, and he asks you, are you Moses from Bani Israel? So he is a prophet to some African nation. Now, there is another theory, and the theory is that this journey did not happen in the north of Africa. It happened after the Israelites had crossed from the Sinai into Palestine area, and they were in the area of Sinai rather. And that is where Moses had to travel. And in that case, there are 2 or 3 candidate areas. I mean, the first would be where the Red Sea meets the Indian Ocean, the Bab al-Mandab, we already talked about it. Second would be where the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean meet, which is the Straits of Hormuz. And the third would be a very interesting thing, which I've come across, and I would like to present it and make a case for it. The third, Majma al-Bahrain, could be Bahrain. Now, why do I think it could be Bahrain? What 2 bodies of water combine in Bahrain? None as far as we know now, but let's look at it. Now, Bahrain, the current day Bahrain is an island It was in ancient time only known as Awal. That was the name of this current day Bahrain island. But at that time, the time of the Prophet and the time of Moses, Bahrain referred to the area of South Iraq, Kuwait, and east of Arabia, especially Qatif and the island of Bahrain. And these areas, they had two bodies of water. Number one, the Persian Gulf, and the second, there was a large lake in the East Arabian Qatif region, which drained into the Persian Gulf, and that is why the area was called Bahrain. The name has stuck, although that lake has disappeared, and now you only see one body of water. Yet there's another reason for it too. There are springs of fresh water at the seabed around the island of Bahrain, and fresh water comes out and bubbles up to the surface. So fresh water meets salt water. Even today you can see that, and that's another reason why this place was called Bahrain. So it is possible that this was the site where Moses adventured and met Khidr. And an interesting thing is that the region of Bahrain, or the current day Awal Island, it was very fertile at that time because there was a lake in the east of Arabia, Qatif region, and there was climate change different from what it is now. It was a big source of cotton production. Cotton was a very expensive commodity in the ancient time. Very rich area. Alexander the Great, when he was returning from India to Babylon, he stopped at this area and he settled some Greeks. So this area became Greek dominated. Even after Alexander, the Parthians who took over, they were Greek speaking race. Although they were Persian in origin, they spoke Greek. Official language of Bahrain and Awal region remained Greek up to the time of the Prophet. And unofficial languages were Syriac and Aramaic. So there was a big Greek influence. Even when they became Christian, they went to the Syriac church, which taught Greek Bible. Now, why is it important? When you come to the stories of Khidr, it's important because Alexander the Great was venerated. He was respected in the region of Awal and Bahrain. And there was a big community which spoke Greek language. They were culturally Greek, although surrounded by Persians. And they loved Alexander. There are stories of Alexander known as Alexander Romance. And from these stories, there is one story in which Alexander meets Khidr. So, you know, the Old Testament and the Quran, they combine with the local legends. And Khidr is living there, and because it's Bahrain where the fresh water is coming out of salt water is death. You can't drink it and live, and fresh water is life. So there was a myth and legend of the fountain of life and youth, Abi Hayat in Persian, and Ma'i Hayat or Ma'al Hayat in Arabic. And the story was that Alexander met Khidr, and Khidr had drank the fountain of youth water and fountain of life water, and he had become immortal. And we'll see later in the stories, there is a Melchizedek in the ancient Bible, which was also an inspiration for the character of Khidr, and people developed these stories. So stories started to emerge about Alexander, and Alexander was renamed as Zulkarnain because in Surah Al Kahf there's a mention of a king known as Zulkarnain. So many people took Alexander from Zulkarnain and combined him with Khidr, combined two stories and made a lot of myths and legends. And over time, these myths and legends, they became more mainstream than the story in Surah Al Kahf. So let's get on with the next ayat, which tell us what happens on this journey. This was just the first part. We have an idea where he might be heading. Wherever Moses is going, may peace be upon him, with Yeshua bin Nun, Joshua, he is going in a very far off direction, either to the east of Africa or to the western end of North Africa or to the end of Egypt or down to Sudan and Khartoum or to the end of Persian Gulf, or he is heading towards Bahrain itself. So a very long journey. He's going to be very tired, and you'll find it out in the next few ayat. So next section, we are going to take the story from there. They are on their journey. What happens next? And some incredible, unbelievable things happen on the way. Look forward to seeing you. Join me again on Dawah with Dr. Khan on YouTube. Till then, take care. Bye. A special thank you for everyone who made this effort possible, especially our IT team. Last but not the least, a big thank you and special prayers for the person who started this dawah effort with me but prefers to stay anonymous at present. Please remember us all in your prayers. May Allah reward everyone who's involved in this dawah effort, especially the people who are watching it and listening to it. May Allah reward them in this life and the hereafter. Ameen summa ameen.